Welcome to the Life with Joey Calvo Podcast. I'm Joey Calvo. Before we get started, I need to get some things off my chest. First thing I need to present is over the weekend, a lot has been going on with me because I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression in 2009. And over the weekend, I realized that, my life wasn't going the way I wanted it to go. And I came to a point where I started to say I had it, and this podcast wouldn't have happened. So I actually confronted myself and went to Penn's Landing here in Philadelphia and was looking at the Delaware River and almost thinking about ending my life. And so I confronted it because I was like, why is this happening? Why am I feeling this? So when I went to the Delaware River, I sat there. I started to realize, I was weighing why, as I'm looking at the river, I'm like, why should I be around? I'm not getting anywhere. This podcast is not getting anywhere. And I was realizing also how I was treating people. And that was the main snap that caused me to go to this. So as I was sitting down, I had a chat with God, and he turned around and reassured me things will get better and that there are people that care about you and understood why you are what you are. So as I was leaving, I watched a couple get engaged, seeing couples holding hands in hand, and I was like, I'll be okay. I can get through this. And then when I left, after reassuring myself that my life can get better, because I'm unemployed right now. And that's been another stickler at me because I can't, right now, as you can tell with this podcast, I'm on my cell phone. I'm on the computer I usually use because I couldn't afford the internet. So that's why I have a GoFundMe page, and the Patreon page that's on there is to benefit the podcast. It's not really for as much me. It's to make this podcast better because I was getting offers to expand this podcast. And every time I wanted to go for it, I wanted to fall flat on my face because I couldn't afford it. So that's why I did this. But when I left Penn's Landing, I found out a classmate of mine had died not long after I left with the thought of ending my life. So I thank God for another day. I also thank God for accepting me for my flaws and my weaknesses. And I do thank those that support me because without them, I really wouldn't be here right now. So please help support this podcast because this may be the last podcast that will be happening. Okay. I can't do everything by myself anymore. And I've started to accept that. So, please, help support the podcast in any way. So I apologize to our guest, Dr. Emily Lazarou, who is a forensic psychologist. And Dr. Emily, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Joey.
Okay. So let me take this off a minute. There we go. All right. So, Dr. Emily, how did we get to where we're at right now? What?
Joey, you put me in a situation here. I'm thinking, wow, I wasn't expecting that, so.
It comes with the territory. I always
Yeah,
ask.
I know.
I always.
That's what
I
my
always
job is.
ask,
It does come with the
yeah,
territory.
yeah. I always ask my guests how they got to where they're at.
Okay. Do you want to hear that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So first, Joey, my name is Dr. Lazarou, so it's a little bit off of Lazarus, but that's okay.
Oh, I apologize.
That's okay. And I'm a forensic psychiatrist, so I'm a little bit different than a psychologist.
Oh,
And
sorry.
my primary difference is I'm a medical doctor, and that's what people really know. I'm a medical doctor, and so I look at everything with that medical perspective. So I'm a psychiatrist. I treat patients, and then I do forensic work on top of that. So just
Okay.
to give you a baseline or foundation so you understand.
Okay.
But my foundational education is I got my undergrad degree from Baylor, and then I went on to do my master's at Texas A&M, and then I went to medical school in the University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio, and then I went on to do my residency at the University of South Florida Department of Psychiatry in Tampa, which is how I got my original training. And then I did a 1-year forensic fellowship in forensic psychiatry. And so that's how I got the training to do what I do today. But I've been doing it now since 2008. I graduated my fellowship in 2008. So I've been doing it almost 20 years now.
Okay. All right. So we have, before this podcast started, I sent Dr. Emily the questions in advance, so she has an idea. So the first question, and these questions come from our podcast number one supporter, number one fan, and she's a real life superheroine. Her name is American Fox. Unfortunately, I can't post her picture on here because it's not like the way, like I said, we're on life support on this, so we had lots of sacrificing. So the first question she gave her threw us both off because we're not a fan of the show Criminal Minds. So the first question she had asked was, could you have worked in the BAU in Criminal Minds? And we were both like, what the hell's the BAU unit? What the hell's the BAU? And so I had to get clarification for it to find out it was the behavioral analysis unit. And I was like, okay, well, we never watched the show, so we don't know what it was. Yeah. So, do you think you could be working in something like that?
I mean, Joey, I think that we run those. Yeah, I mean, I definitely, because I've run several state hospital forensic units. So, and I ran, I've run, the psychiatric portion of death row, and also many of the units in a psychiatric facility. Union Correctional Facility is one of our big psychiatric units here in Florida. So I run several of those units. So I would say that probably yes. I also ran a not guilty by reason of insanity clinic in San Antonio, Texas. So I would say that that's probably something that I would be able to run. I've never, like you said, I don't watch the show, so I don't know exactly what it is. And maybe that the BAU is maybe the correctional version of that, or like the police version. I don't know really.
I believe it's kind of like, if we ever watch the show like Blue Bloods, and it's like going to the coroner's office and figuring out how someone was murdered or died.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it came off of, something like that.
I would say yes then. I mean, if because we work, I don't want to say hand in hand, but, with the pathologist and the cases that I do, because I do, how does someone kill someone in this manner from a psychiatric standpoint? That's what I do. So I would say, like I said, I would probably run a unit like that. Because I do the mental health portion of whatever the crime is. That's what I
Right.
sort of do.
Right. Okay. So question number 2, we already asked this in the beginning, but she asked, how did you get into this field?
Yeah.
So
So American, I like American Fox. I saw the picture. Thanks, Joey, for sending it to me so I could see what she looks like. What's up?
yeah.
What's up, American? I'm a fan of yours. So let's see. How did I get in my field? I'm a psychiatrist, and so I already had that training. And how I
Mhm.
decided to do forensics, which is what my field is I actually was working at the VA hospital, the Veterans Administration Hospital here,
Mhm.
and there's a portion of that whole program which involves service connection. And if anybody has been a veteran before, they would know what that is, or they get
Mhm.
money for injuries that they have received in service.
Mhm.
And I would be doing the psychiatric injuries. And so I was doing that when I was a resident. And I really enjoyed that work because it wasn't necessarily treatment, but it was using my knowledge as a person that understands psychiatry and diagnoses to then give someone a service connection or give someone an award for a certain percentage of whatever their mental health issue is. And so I got to do that. And then from there I also worked for a health insurance company, a carve out, where I was doing the medical necessity
Mhm.
evaluations of all the cases. So because of that, then you learn the criteria why insurance companies pay for what they do and what are the exclusionary criteria. And for forensic psychiatry, this is what we do every day. So
Mhm.
needless to say, I was very good at that. And I moved up really quickly. Within 1 month, I was a director of it. And
Mhm.
uh, and so at that point, uh, then that's whenever I looked for a fellowship in forensics. And so I got actually I was lucky enough to have the fellowship that I did at University of South Florida. I was the first fellow to graduate. So I was the reason the program started, because I
Okay.
was engaged and I needed to be here. And so therefore they started the program for me here. So that's where I got my training. That's how I started. But that's where I got my interest in doing it,
Mhm.
because normally
Mhm.
I treat patients. That's what I do. That's what I do in this office. My patients sit at this couch and I sit at this chair over here and I treat patients. But then the forensic part I got from doing this other work.
Okay. So question number 3 was this: how did medicine mix with legal?
Okay. How does medicine mix with legal? That's the very basis of my profession, the intersection between psychiatry and the law. And so
Mhm.
that's medicine and the law. And how do we mix? So, I do cases all the time where some medical condition could have a
Mhm.
manifestation in a psychiatric illness, and that
Mhm.
psychiatric illness then from that psychiatric illness flows the crime. So
Mhm.
that's how I get involved in that. So the basis of the crime is psychiatry, and that's how those two go together.
Okay. Okay. All right. The last one from American Fox, and this question is in a personal way with in reference to what I talked about in the beginning. And her question is, can fear of failure in a relationship force one to push the other away?
Yes, American. So I don't know if American is dealing what type of person she's dealing with, so I can't directly answer that. But what the flavor of this question is, at least to me as a psychiatrist, is that
Mm-hmm.
maybe American is talking about somebody that has an avoidant personality disorder. Avoidant personality disorder, and I just so happen to have a book right here
Okay.
about it. How to Love a Dismissive Partner. And
Okay.
it basically talks about this same dynamic that Americans talking about right now. And can a fear of failure in a relationship force one to push the other way? It definitely does, because they fear that they're not good enough for the person that they're in a relationship with. And so they don't want to be left. And so they leave before they can be left, because it's big would be a big self-esteem hit if they did that, if someone left them So they leave the other person. However, the other person has no idea of this thought process. The other
Mm-hmm.
person has no desire to leave the person. All
Mm-hmm.
of these fears and these anxieties are within the person American's talking about, which
Mm-hmm.
then makes them leave preemptively. But they have no idea because they don't usually confront the other partner about what even their feelings are. And many times I see these relationships a lot, and many times the other partner has no idea that this person feels this way. It's the person's internal feelings about themselves that they feel that ultimately, if they get closer to this person, the other person is going to understand that they don't like this person and that they're going to want to leave. And so they preemptively do that. They leave or they cause a reason to be the other person when they'll tell them the other person that, or they'll say it's, oh, well, it's due to work, or it's due to, my religious background, or it's due to something else. They won't ever say that it's due to me feeling insecure about our relationship. They're just going to come up with an excuse. Many times it's a third, like something outside of the relationship. Sometimes they'll even say something about the other person and makes the other person feel bad about themselves, to leave. And that's not nice, but that does happen too. That happens in narcissistic personality disordered relationships a lot of times.
Okay, so Dr. Emily, I want to thank you because remember I said before I read the question that it's personal. And I'm going to admit I'm the one she's talking about.
Oh,
in reference to that. And like I explained, yeah, and like I explained in the beginning of this podcast, when I said about confronting myself about almost ending my life, this was part of the reasons because of it. But like I said, and I'm also going to mention that I had gone through professional help. I had gone through a psychiatrist. I had gone through psychologists as well. And with the psychiatrist, he turned around and actually told me that this podcast was my therapy. And when he said that to me, I'm like, what? I was like, I wasn't believing it. And then as time went on, I started to realize that it has been. I just didn't, get the feel right away of it. And as time went by, I started to realize this was it. This was a good thing. And then the psychologists, all they kept saying to me was, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? I was like, well, in the back of my mind, I was like, well, if you're going to tell me what I'm going to do about it, why am I seeing you? Because you're not giving me the help I need. You're asking me what I'm going to do about this. What am I going to do about that? When I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And that's how I'm feeling now. That's how I was feeling now. There are times I don't know what I'm really doing.
Yeah.
And when American Fox asked that question, I was pushing people away. I get to a point, and I apologize for bringing myself. I should have.
No, Joey, it's good. I was gonna ask you some questions. So when you finish that, I'll ask you some questions.
Okay.
Questions, Joey.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to push it into something personal, because I did have a guest on, and when after the end of the podcast, they're like, "Oh my God, I stepped over a border, and I shouldn't have done," in reference to it, because I got them involved. And every podcast that I've reached out, when I've had guests like you and others, I listen and then I don't use it. I don't follow through on it. And that was another thing that American Fox caught on. So I also want to introduce you to my number one critic as well. And so, in reference to that, like I said, when I was finding out that I was pushing people away, I actually found out I was being controlling. And I was like, wait a minute. How am I being controlling? I mean, when I was married, my ex-wife literally controlled me. And I think I kind of picked it up, because with my ex-wife, her thing was what's yours is mine, what's mine is mine. So, and then she cheated like all the other relationships I had. They all cheated me. And I was never told why. I never got like, oh, well, because of this. Nobody was cut and dry until American Fox came around. So as I was realizing that all this stuff was happening to me, I was like, that's it. When she mentioned about the fear of failure, the failure of a relationship, this was why. Because I didn't want to do this to anybody else. I was at the point that I didn't want to hurt anybody else, even though I was hurting myself doing it, mentally. And like I said, what happened over the weekend in reference to it was kind of that. And like I said, I thank God that he stopped me from following through on that idea. And he also made me realize that this podcast is my calling. Hence why I can't do everything by myself anymore. But everybody can follow American Fox on Twitter at American Fox 4, as well as on Instagram at American Fox 12018, and she's now on the website Alignable. So definitely reach out. She loves chatting with people. I said a lot. Okay, Dr. Emily, I'm ready for the questions. I'm ready because now that as I'm going through this, not only did I take it as a self journey now, but I also realized it was spiritual too. And and over the past couple of days since that happened, I've had former classmates reach out to me as they were asking me about the classmate that passed away. I was apologizing to them for how I treated them. And some didn't well, I'm sorry that you were like this, that you're feeling this. And so one had sent me a sermon by Dr. Charles Stanley. And it was peace within myself. And I started to take notes. And as I was taking notes, I was like, okay, this is what's going on. And then I also had a former guest before all this too, Dr. Michelle Maidenberg. And when she was on, like I said, I was grabbing ideas, but I never followed through on them. Well, like within the past week on Instagram, she had posted some of these other, like what you were mentioning about the diagnosis. And so I was like, this is what I've been doing. So everything I've been doing has been like a defense mechanism to myself, hiding behind that, being defensive and stuff. And so I was like, now I'm seeing why I'm pushing people away, why I'm doing these things. So I am learning. But to get back to what wind up happening is, as I was watching the video for Dr. Charles Stanley, there was another message from another televangelist I watched, Joel Osteen. Same thing. And soon as I watched his, everything just really opened up. And I was like, you know what? He's right. I'm not a finished product. I'm the clay and God's the potter. And I should leave everything on the table and let him work with it. And that I need to accept myself for my flaws and my weaknesses. And since then, I'm like, you know what? I should, because I'm still my own worst enemy. When you mentioned about putting people down, yeah, that happened in school. I was put down. I didn't feel accepted then, and that's where the damage was literally done, was when I was younger. So with that, I carried that throughout my life. So I still try to figure out what, sometimes why I was cheated on, but I also started to realize now that it was me. And like I said, when American Fox asked that question, can a fear of failure in a relationship force one to push the other away? It was because we had built something, a friendship. And during that friendship, like I said, she brought the stuff out to me. Yes, it hurt me, but I was grateful that she brought it out because no one ever told me. And because of that, I literally thank American Fox, left, right, up, down, every which way. And if I was to see her in person, I'd probably give her the biggest hug in the world to show appreciation for what she's done. So, and again, I apologize, Dr. Emily, that I cut you away from wanting to ask the questions to me. So go ahead. I'm ready to move forward.
Okay, Joey. So my first question to you would be, when did you start this podcast?
I started this podcast in 2019.
Oh, wow. So it's been a long time.
Yeah. So during the beginning, I was working from home, matter of fact, and it led into COVID, but I was looking for something to make a quote unquote side hustle.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't I was making $11 an hour being a customer service rep at home and working 40 hours a week. And it just wasn't enough. And so.
You mean it wasn't enough emotionally, Joey, or wasn't enough financially, or both?
It wasn't enough financially, but it was also not enough emotionally, because I do have another relationship besides the friendship with American Fox that I still feel, and I quote this a lot within it, that and like you even said, I don't deserve, in reference to it. I don't deserve what I'm at right now because of who I am, or who I think I am, in reference to that. So
what do you think? I deserve better or worse, Joey? What do you mean I don't deserve that? I can't tell which way you're talking.
What I'm saying is, in reference to who American Fox is, everything that she has done, yes, like I said, I'm appreciative, but just because it was like I wanted more. And when somehow I was just, as I was picking up things, I'm like, you know what? I put too high of an expectation on it.
On
that
what?
on the friendship part, to push things towards a relationship that I was making myself fail. And that's where I was coming to the point where I don't deserve this person. I don't deserve to be with this person or associate with this person or anything. I have another relationship that's a complicated one. And I've spent time with this person since 2011. And there were times that everything was great and everything I was feeling, I was starting to feel good within the relationship, but at the same time, I was still holding that other stuff. But I don't know why I didn't feel like I didn't deserve that one either. And there were times I'm like, I appreciated that it happened, but I was like, why did I deserve this? How did I deserve this? And so now, between the two, it just, they didn't give up on me. They still believe in me, no matter what. And like I said, I appreciate everything in reference to it. So that's where the don't deserve came from. It was because, like I said, of what happened in my past.
You mean with your wife, or?
Well, with all my relationships, including my ex-wife. Okay. So
it's complicated, Joey. It seems like
it is. It is very complicated. And like I said, when I went to get professional help, all I kept getting asked was, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
And so then what did you say in response to that?
Well, I couldn't because I didn't have an answer.
No, I was like, why are you asking me? I'm coming to you for help.
Right. And then, and
isn't that what you said?
Yeah, that's, well, I was saying that to myself, though. I didn't say it to the person.
Why not? Why didn't you say it to the person? Because you're paying that person to help you, right?
Right. I guess I just did. I was at the time. I guess I had that fear of confronting at the time that I couldn't do it.
But you're not really confronting. You're just asking the service person who's there to help you, hey, right. I need help. And I know you keep asking me what I'm going to do, but what I'm doing is coming to see you to get assistance with my issue.
Right. So, and then when and then when they did bring out something, I'm like, okay, well, it just didn't work because I don't know. I just didn't feel like I could follow through with it because of that fear. And like I said, so now for the first time in 17 years, I started going to church. And when I started going to church, the spiritual part of me opened up and said, you know what? We're going to get you to forgive yourself. We're going to get you to love yourself. And so, with the exception of maybe 2 Sundays, I've gone to church. And when I get out of church, I started doing something that I normally would never do. Normally, I would go straight home. But, it was during the summer. And, of course, being in Philadelphia, one great place to be is what's called Rittenhouse Square. Well, the church is right across from Rittenhouse Square. So what I would do is I would go sit in Rittenhouse Square and just observe everything that God has created. And, watching couples walking by holding hands, watching people walking by, walking their animals, And I was starting to like feel like I was like meditating as I was doing it. And I was like, this is good. Lots of good things are coming through. And, I'm realizing that I'm getting better. I'm starting to slowly accept myself. And then every time I would find out something negative, boom, I'm right back to that. What American Fox would tell you is, well, since American Fox doesn't have an alter ego, she calls mine Negative Joey. And Negative Joey comes out, and hence the pushing and wanting to isolate and all that jazz. So when she feels Negative Joey's coming out, this is when she says, I don't want to be part of the pity party.
Oh, I see.
And I never realized that I was always seeking everybody else's approval instead of my own. And like I said, now I'm starting to learn that at 54 years old. I'm starting to realize I should be approving myself. And this weekend, when I watched the Joel Osteen message of peace within yourself, is when I was like, okay, yes, I need to approve myself. I need to love myself because I'm still my own worst enemy. I mean, I still could snap and go back to being that Negative Joey and say goodbye and F you all, and just like hide, crawl into a little hole and forget everything exists to me, But the two will not let that happen. I think now they're at the point where they're ready to put a wall at that hole to make sure I never go back into it again.
Who is they?
American Fox and the complicated relationship I told you about.
Okay.
So, and then I started to realize too, through Joel, that I need to look at all the right things I ever did instead of all the negative. And when I was like, I almost started to question myself, like, what right things did I do? But when I mentioned it to like American Fox and the complicated relationship, I started to see that there were some things I did. Giving compliments to people and making their day, not realizing, that when I was doing it, even though I knew when I was doing it, it boosted me up a little bit, but it wasn't, maybe I felt like it wasn't enough. So.
Well,
okay.
Joey, this is the thing. So, Freud said to be human is to love and to work. Those two things. If you don't have either one of those, it causes problems. So that's a very foundational thing, which you've told me, or at least you said it at the beginning, that you're having issues with sort of those two things.
Yeah.
So that's a whole foundational thing that you're missing.
Yeah. And then, like I said, started on Sunday. Like I said, when I started to watch Joel Osteen, I started to turn around and say, you know what? Thank you for accepting me. I mean, I knew God had forgiven me for my past in reference to it. It was just I wasn't forgiving myself of it. Of all my past actions. I wasn't forgiving myself. It all came back to me not forgiving me. And that's what it really is, what causes the fear of everything else, because I'm afraid the past is going to come in and, destroy it. So
Why
I was.
could the past come in? I mean, are we talking about a major thing, like a legal thing or something like this? Or are you just talking about like your personal thing?
Well, some of it was legal, but I don't have to worry about the legal part anymore in reference to now. Okay. It's more of the, like I said, when I was put down and how I found out I was treating people with the controlling and the pushing and all that stuff. Okay. That's what now is the worry. When I was hearing that, yeah.
What is the worry?
I just have this fear that this relationship that I'm going into now is going to be like the others. Somehow, something is going to happen and the person is not going to want to be with me, but be with someone else.
Okay. So when you say it's going to go be like the others, what have you done now, Joey, that's going to make it not be like the others? Because a lot of times people like you pick the same type of person, one. Mm-hmm. Two, you haven't changed your pattern of handling your self-esteem issues. So invariably, you're going to go back to it. Two, when you get into stressors. Then three, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because you haven't changed anything to make the relationship actually do well. And so then it's gonna explode. And then you're going to go back to the spiral thing that you talked about earlier, which we don't want to have.
Right. Well, like I said, when I watched Joel Osteen Sunday and realized that I'm not a finished product and that I'm, like I said, like he said, I'm the clay and God's the potter and he's still molding me. Yeah. So when I heard that is when I was like, okay, I need to remind myself that I had work to do. Yeah. So the first thing that Joel kind of said was look in the mirror and say to yourself, I accept who I am, flaws and all. And I turned around, matter of fact, it was yesterday. I looked in the mirror and I was like, you know what? You're okay. And it started to feel, good because I was like, okay, you're okay. You're you're totally accepted. You had been forgiven. And so I was like, okay, we took that first step. We're slowly taking that first step. We just have to remind ourselves of that we're good, that we're accepted. So now I'm, like every day, I'm like, now, like when I wake up, I'm like, thank you for accepting me. Thank you for me being here and still being able to move forward and being able to rebuild my life. And so, I am still appreciative, even though I'm still unemployed and don't have money to work with. So, but in the back of my mind, I'm like, I can let that go, even though it's happening. But if I don't think about it, I could be okay. And I could move on. And I could start to say, all right, let's do this. Or not that I don't still attempt to seek employment. I applied for disability because I was diagnosed with diabetes. I have sleep apnea. I have degenerative of joints. And when I lost my job in Amazon in February last year, I wind up having a meniscus tear in my right knee. And so that took me out of work for a little bit. And when I tried to, quote unquote, catch up, I was burning myself out. But they didn't fire me they didn't terminate me for the performance. They terminated me for the attendance.
And why would you have problems with attendance? Weren't you doing work from home?
Oh, no. I left that job. Okay. Let me clarify this. I left that work from home job in 2021.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Dr. Urban. I didn't mention that. And the reason why I left that job in 2021 is, and how I'm stating this, is I had a mental breakdown. Literally, I had a mental breakdown because where I was working, there was an upgrade being done within what I was doing. And so they had me work off a piece of paper. And off that piece of paper is what I was explaining to customers what to do in reference to certain things. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be better if I actually had a prototype of this item that we're working with? And so because of that, I was getting customers frustrated because as I was explaining off a piece of paper what to do, instead of physically being able to do it myself and saying, okay, if you do this, try this, as I'm doing it with them, and it wound up being a mental breakdown because of that. I left the job. So, and then in November of 21 is when I started working for Amazon.
And you've been at Amazon since?
I was up until February, actually January 30th of this year.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I got terminated from Amazon for not presenting on time?
I was what was happening was I was starting to pick up I during the time I was coming in and working. So, and there were, and then, like I said, I wound up having, my knee started to bother me while I was working to find out I had a meniscus tear in my right knee. So the doctor had me take time off. And when I did get the okay to go back to work, I started picking up extra shifts to catch up to, being able to fulfill the financial part.
Yeah.
And when I was starting to do as I was picking up those shifts, I started to feel tired and burnt out because I was pushing myself to do that stuff.
Right.
And that's where that happened, was because of me wind up being the burnout. Even when I explained that I was burnt out, I was doing it. It was getting to the point where it was happening a lot.
What? You just weren't coming to work, or you were showing up late, or what?
No. It was just that I was too tired to go to work physically.
For what reason?
Well, like I said, I was just tired because I either had worked a shift to come home and try to rest up to go to the next one, and I just didn't have enough strength to get myself to do it.
And your reason is for what? Why didn't you have enough strength to get up and do it?
Because I was tired. Because
Joey, me and you could go on forever, because this is the thing. I'm a mother of a new little baby. He's just about to be 8 months old. I work about 100 hours a week, and I'm up with him all night. And you know what? even though I'm tired, I still go to work. Why? Because I got 5 kids and I got to take care of. So that's a very big motivator for me.
Well, like I said, I'm by myself right now, so that's
I know.
But like
that's
I said,
what I'm saying.
but
It's amazing how different that can be.
yeah, but the health issues also, like I said, in reference to the knee and so on, that was another thing that was bothering. Or like I said, but it was just I was just not it. Like I'm saying, I was just overwhelming myself in reference to going and getting it. It's not that I didn't want to go. It's just my body was saying to me, "Hey, slow down. You're pushing your limits." Right. In reference to it, that's where it. That's where
the overwhelm of that worse than the overwhelm you have now, where you can't pay your bills.
Yeah. Well, like I said, and I wanted to go back, but at the same time, now I wind up starting having a little bit more health issues. Matter of fact, I was in the hospital at the end of August, and because I just wasn't feeling right, and I actually started to question my health to find out I actually had dehydrated my kidneys because I wasn't drinking water. I wasn't, and then also in reference to food stamps, because I get food stamps, I didn't have enough food in the house to manage with. So my blood pressure all of a sudden was starting to be low. And that, I found out while I was working at Amazon in 2023, just before Thanksgiving, that I was diabetic with type 2. So I was like, okay, I don't check my blood sugar, which is my own fault. I admit that.
Why is that? Why is that?
I just don't. I just do what I do. I do what I feel and just go with that. But as I'm feeling, I'm not saying, I'm not realizing, I gained so much, because I'm also obese. So that was another thing that, gets to me as well.
Well, yeah, so, you probably wouldn't have diabetes if that wasn't the case.
Right. Yeah. Because I now weigh the last I checked, about 240.
And how tall are you?
I'm 5'4".
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Matter of fact, my ex-wife was 5'4" as well, and she weighed 325.
Wow.
Yeah. And so,
gosh,
and like I said, it's just everything just snowballed on me to the point where I'm at now. And and I also put blame to myself for being that way, of why, of causing myself to lose my job at Amazon. So that was another part of the wanting to isolate too. But that part of it wasn't, a cause to isolate. It was just, I was just blaming myself because of what was going on with my health. Because when I worked that work at home job, I was looking out for everybody else. Even my supervisor was like, you guys take a look at yourself and, think about your health. Because when I was working for them, if I picked up a shift, I was sitting down a lot.
Yeah.
So, and going off of that, And, they were appreciative that I did it, but at the same time, they're like, you know what? You got to stop pushing yourself because you're not helping yourself. When I got sick, I mean, I was really out of it. You know, like I would be sick for 2 or 3 days, but I was getting mad at me because I'm like, why am I sick? I should be working. And sometimes I even worked when I was sick, so.
Well, that's what normal people do, right, Joe?
Yeah.
Normal people work when they're sick every day.
Yeah. But like I said, before I was let go, before I turned around and said, I was done. Like I said, when I had the mental breakdown, it was only because of the way that everything was operating about it. So, okay, next question.
Oh, is there another question?
From you.
I mean, Joey, I've been talking with you within it, but I mean, this is too hard to do in this little situation because there's a lot of private information, and I don't want to get into private information.
Right.
I'm not your doctor or anything like that, but
right.
I mean, there's a lot of places where this could go, but like I said, then this is the foundational thing, which I want to leave you with. I mean, just for your own knowledge is, like I said, that's what Freud said. Freud said to love and to work is to be human. So if you got those two things mixed up, and I would also say with your spiritual component, I'm Catholic and I'm very spiritual, so I'm very with you on that. But I would say that God would say, Joey, don't get in a relationship right now. You got too much work to do on yourself. To get into a relationship like this, you're already bound to fail. So why are you doing that? Why are you setting yourself up for failure? So you can have another excuse to not achieve? That's what I would leave you with, because that's what I see with patients all the time with these similar things like America was talking about earlier in one of those questions.
Yeah. But at the same time, I am realizing that I can't do everything by myself. And that's the main thing now.
What are you doing, Joey? Because you're not working, and then you don't have a relationship. So what are you doing by yourself right now besides this podcast?
That's
which
it.
You've been doing since 2019. Obviously, you can do it with your hands tied behind your back. So it's not really. I wouldn't think that it costs you too much work to do that. So
right.
So why are you saying you can't do it on your own?
Well, I mean, right, because when I was getting unemployment and everything, I was okay. I was managing, to be able to do the podcast the right way. I mean, I should have managed myself a little bit better during that time to where I could have expanded and been able to do it. But my thinking at the time was not right. And so now, like I'm saying, the mentality of really looking at myself and accepting myself is the one thing that the relationship that I'm having needed, was that positivity in me. So the positivity was building during that time, but it was having it up and down like an emotional roller coaster, as I'm told. So how can people reach out to you, Dr. Emily?
What do you mean? How can they reach out to me?
In reference, if someone wanted to come to you and want you to be their doctor, or reach out and maybe ask you a question in reference to how could, if people want to seek help.
Yeah. I mean, people email me. That's how I get into. I have a website. I have a business website, and people can go on there. But mostly people just email me because all my patients are private. So I don't have like a lot of advertising or anything. My practice is pretty small. I only take certain patients. So They usually reach out to me via email, or they get referred by another patient of mine or something like that. That's sort of how I get patients.
Okay.
And, well, forensic cases as well. That forensic cases, they email me too.
Okay. All right. Well, Dr. Emily, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you, Joey.
And you know, I have a great holiday season.
Thank you. You too, Joey. God bless you, and take care of yourself.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for watching the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. God bless you all.